Corporations spend billions constructing sophisticated risk models to map the future. Yet, when catastrophic, outlier events strike, these statistical defenses routinely collapse. Without a functional roadmap, organizations freeze. Supply chains halt, communication networks fracture, and executive teams are left completely paralyzed by environmental or geopolitical shocks they failed to foresee. Consider the aftermath of the 2011 Japanese tsunami. A massive blue trawler ended up miles inland, amidst the splintered debris of a neighborhood. Calculating the exact probability of an earthquake of that precise magnitude hitting that specific coastline is an impossible statistical task. True corporate resilience requires abandoning the pursuit of forecasting outliers and instead optimizing to mitigate their consequences. This is a standard bell curve, highlighting the limits of 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations. It forms the mathematical bedrock of traditional risk modeling. The model assumes a world of tame randomness. Fluctuations are confined within these predictable boundaries, returning reliably to the mean. The flaw in applying this to global markets or geopolitics is that socioeconomic systems do not operate under tame randomness. They are wild. A single outlier, a fat tail event, can suddenly materialize and render the historical data completely irrelevant. When the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded, no pricing data or risk matrix could contain the fallout. The variable conditions shifted entirely. Similarly, the 2010 eruption of an Icelandic volcano grounded European airspace for a week. Linear predictive models simply cannot map the trajectory of such events. In highly complex, globally connected networks, a single failure cascades. Interdependencies multiply the impact, breaking the assumptions required for linear math. To survive, companies have to split their approach to uncertainty into 2 distinct operational protocols. They must abandon probability prediction for extreme outliers to focus entirely on survival, while aggressively engineering their forecasting accuracy for bounded, strategic events. The modern global supply chain is a highly optimized network of interconnected dependencies. It is efficient, but extremely fragile. Traditional risk assessments force analysts to evaluate this network by guessing the likelihood of specific causes, assigning probabilities to strikes, fires, or political upheavals. Attempting to predict the exact trigger of an outage wastes critical resources. If a factory goes offline, the logistical steps required to mitigate that loss are identical whether the cause was a superstorm or a cyber attack. MIT researcher David Simchi-Levy devised a mathematical pivot. Instead of trying to guess the cause, organizations should hold the probability constant at 100%, ignore the trigger entirely, and isolate the resulting impact. This missing node visualization introduces a central metric, time to recovery, or TTR, the exact time required to restore a node. By removing one node at a time, optimization models calculate the absolute minimum performance and financial impact the company will suffer. Shifting to this node-agnostic vulnerability model provides the only mathematically sound method for quantifying extreme risk exposure. To see this model applied to a physical system, look at automotive manufacturing. Vehicle assembly is highly synchronized and rigidly sequential. Ford Motor Company conducted a comprehensive risk audit of its supply chain to test the vulnerability model. Conventional corporate logic assumes that high-spend strategic partners, the ones providing engines and transmissions, carry the highest operational risk. This scatter plot illustrates the risk exposure index, measuring performance impact based on total spend versus profit impact. Data reveals 61% of sites have zero impact on Ford's profit, but true vulnerabilities exist in an isolated 2% of sites, causing catastrophic failure. These hidden risks are low-cost commodity suppliers, providing cheap, entirely unglamorous, but absolutely essential components like O-rings, valves, or specialty resins. Optimizing exclusively for financial efficiency strips excess inventory from these low-spend nodes. It creates leverage on paper, but leaves the entire production line fatally fragile. Biological systems do not optimize this way. Nature relies on spare parts, 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, to absorb and survive sudden shocks. Structural resilience requires organizations to actively mirror biological redundancy. They must sacrifice minor capital efficiency in commodity parts to prevent catastrophic single-point failures. Once extreme, unpredictable outliers are accounted for, organizations can pivot to the sweet spot of risk management, bounded mid-range strategic events. These are domains like competitor reactions, product launch revenues, or hiring success, where logic, historical data, and expert judgment intersect. The Good Judgment Project, a massive multi-year prediction tournament, proved that predictive accuracy in these domains is not an innate talent, it is an engineerable process. The researchers found that just a single hour of targeted training on overcoming cognitive biases yields a measurable 14% improvement in forecasting accuracy. Consider anchoring. This timeline illustrates a cognitive bias where an initial available number wildly skews a final estimate, creating a wide, inaccurate probability interval. Enforcing a strict evaluating phase forces analysts to test alternate assumptions before converging on a precise, accurate range. Achieving this requires intellectual diversity. Teams must mandate that analytical generalists actively challenge the presumed domain experts to prevent groupthink. While human intuition is inherently flawed, through strict protocols, it can be systematically calibrated into a highly precise analytical instrument. Corporate forecasts routinely rely on vague, unquantifiable language, like fairly sure or highly likely, phrases designed to maximize wiggle room when predictions fail. Rigorous forecasting mandates exact probability tracking. Teams must state their predictions as precise percentages. This formula calculates the Breyer score, the ultimate accountability metric for tracking probability accuracy. The math penalizes forecasters not just for being wrong, but for displaying false confidence. Claiming to be 100% certain about an incorrect outcome generates a massive penalty. This establishes the dual framework of modern risk strategy. First, map the physical supply chain using time to recovery to survive sublime swans that defy prediction. Second, systematically debias the executive team and track Breyer scores to accurately forecast the bounded strategic events that drive growth. Corporate survival does not require a perfect crystal ball. It requires knowing exactly when to predict the future